Our prediction is that people would probably need to take the vaccine for about 2 years before they would sufficiently change the rest of their life and their psychological makeup and things like that. These are not magic bullets in any way. You really have to work at it. The people who come to us for treatment have generally been using cocaine for 7 to 10 years. Many of them haven't finished school. There are many deficits that they have that would have to be remedied. One of the nice things about vaccines in general is that they're extremely safe. Since all they're doing is holding the drug of abuse in your bloodstream, they don't produce brain effects, and that's of course what happens with most medications that block receptors or block transporters or some other kind of brain mechanism. The safety with tetanus toxoid or cholera toxin has been repeatedly demonstrated in many millions of people for probably billions of doses, so there's nothing about that that would be unusual. And the adjuvants have been the main issue with safety. And the particular adjuvant that we're using right now for the new vaccine is one that has been in people up to 30 times the dose that we're giving in this particular vaccine. And that's been in people for the treatment of use with cancer vaccines, for example. And it also has a very odd use in that it appears to reverse radiation poisoning. The only ethical issues that have come up have been issues that have been raised about nicotine vaccines. The issue with nicotine vaccines has been if you are giving it to adolescents who are not necessarily interested in stopping smoking, could they override the vaccine? Well, with lots of cigarettes, they probably could. And what would you be doing? Well, you'd be defeating the whole purpose of trying to get them free of all the carcinogens that are in tobacco smoke. So they would in fact get a much larger dose of carcinogens before they ever got near a dose of nicotine that was reinforcing. Well, I think the cocaine vaccine in particular still has got a uphill march to convince the larger pharmaceutical companies, which is the kind of support it will need to get through the full approval process, that this is an investment that they should make. The market itself, if you just look at the number of people who abuse cocaine and you then say, well, a treatment like this could easily be sold for $1,000 or more, you have $1 billion market even if only 20% of the cocaine abusers agreed to take it one way or another and had it paid for either by themselves or a municipal authority. And the money saving that you would have just based on emergency room visits alone easily would justify the federal government just paying to vaccinate everybody who needs it. I think that convincing large corporations that the stigma associated with substance abuse is something that they can deal with. The same thing was true of treatments for cancer 40 years ago, that big companies didn't want anything to do with that. Same thing was true of AIDS not so long ago, but money talks, and I think they can see the light once they see that there's a treatment that makes a difference. There's a significant amount of investment in this now from pharmaceutical companies as well as through a number of us investigators. The biggest investment, as you would expect, is in the nicotine vaccines. It's on, I guess, a temporary hold right now, and that all of the large pharmaceutical companies have already made the initial investments with adjuvants that were not very potent, many of which were 30 years old, and convincing them that, in fact, it's worth putting their feet back in the water is going to take a very strong phase 2 study that demonstrates that, in fact, cocaine abusers stop using cocaine, smokers stop smoking, amphetamine users stop using amphetamine, whatever is the target population. And the National Institute of Health has really been a very strong supporter of developing these vaccines, particularly for cocaine and methamphetamine. Well, the FDA is an unpredictable organization, and what will lead to approval there is never certain, and at least for methamphetamine and cocaine, they've yet to approve any medications or any treatment. So the bar that they're setting so far for approval is relatively high. And so unless they back off on that somewhat, it would be difficult, not impossible, but difficult. Nicotine, on the other hand, is a little clearer what the goals would be and approval would be, but we need to meet that.